Welcome back to the final episode of Season 2 with Beyond the Stars with Tim and Jeff.
Welcome to Mysteries, Laughing Shadows, Twisted Themes. JeffMara and Tim Tactical, yes it's real, yes it's real.
Well, Tim, it's the last episode and we've had so much fun this season. So let's finish it off with what is the most asked question. And that is, what do ETs think about humans?
Man, Jeff, Beyond the Stars season 2 was a lot of fun, and apparently people see that too, because we got a lot of comments saying, "Hey, you should do at least 6 or 10 more episodes per season." But there are some big other projects coming up. But anyway, there's always room for a season 3. Yes, let's dive into the most requested topic: how do ETs see humans? And I think that's going to be a fun one.
And for those of you who submitted a question, make sure you watch all the way to the end.
Okay, so when you're asking what do ETs think about humans, then it depends on who you're asking. Sounds surprising, but it's just that way. A lot of ETs think that humans are very eccentric, which shows in their way how they handle things. A lot of ETs enjoy a lot of the technology in the way that it's super retro on planet Earth. Something that people got to keep in mind is that humans have this tendency to build stuff, which other species do not do. There's a lot of species out there who find clever ways to deal with the challenges of the universe without using any technology whatsoever. Insect beings, anything that comes from the kingdom of insects, usually do not connect to technology as well. They just use their own bodies. So if an insect wants to cross a river, what would they do? They would not build a bridge. They would become the bridge. So a lot of species find it quite awkward and quite interesting that these humans on planet Earth are just mechanically building all that kind of stuff. Including their little cars in which they are driving around on the planet. So a lot of beings find humans kind of like eccentric in a way that they do their own stuff. It's a very rare and unique kind of behavior in the universe. Not super rare. There are other species doing that as well, but that's definitely something about that. There are some species that have very loving and beautiful feelings about humans and see all their potential and all their beauty. But I think today's episode is going to be a little bit more about the funny side of things. And one thing that I personally find very funny, and there are more to explore, is that insectoids, insect beings, everything out there that belongs to the family of insects, they find human flesh and human skin kind of disgusting. So whenever you are looking at a spider or any bug and you're like, ooh, be reminded that the same ooh feeling comes from them too when they look at you. So that is definitely something that I found very, very interesting and very special. The reason for that is because most insect beings are used to having and looking at their exoskeleton. So they have like a chitin type of shell mostly. And what they are looking at when they are looking at humans is basically the flesh. And the flesh is actually considered an organ. It is an organ for humans as well. So what humans are basically doing is they kind of reveal their organs to the outside and run around with them bare, showing them to the outside world, which apparently causes this feeling in insectoids. So next time you look at a spider and you go this way, maybe think if you do want to see that same behavior towards yourself.
Besides what ETs think of humans, I wonder what reptilian aliens think of their reptilian brothers here, like lizards and snakes and crocodiles and things like that.
Oh, so you're basically asking about the unevolved pre-versions of themselves.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question, especially if you talk about reptiles, reptilian beings, evolved beings like that, they usually do not have that type of like familiarity or like family feelings with their own species. But there are some beings out there in the universe, because basically everything that we see here in the animal kingdom, those are unevolved species that if you give them 2-3 million years of time and some proper environment, they will get into an evolved form of themselves where they, show intelligent behavior. We see that happening already. Like compare animals from today with animals 50 years ago, you will see that there's an amazing increase in intelligence and consciousness and awareness in animals throughout the whole planet. So alongside humanity, animals are evolving in consciousness as well. We see lately, I've seen a video where a parrot was actually talking to an AI system, and it was absolutely fascinating because they were like going back and forth with each other. And that's what's happening. So there are species out there who look to this planet and who look at octopus, who look at dolphins, and consider them part of their family, even though they're like unevolved versions, like your little cousin Matthew at the Christmas party who's still growing. So that's kind of like the vibe they have. But reptilians usually have less of an emotional attachment to beings of their own species in that way. There's a lot of fighting between reptilians throughout the universe, per se. Yeah.
Have any of the ETs ever expressed to you that on their planet there are very primitive versions of humans?
Yes, I mean, we do know that there are some species holding a monkey or an ape as a pet is somewhat popular in the universe. And it's kind of funny because there are some minor apes, monkeys actually, that look more human than, monkeys on planet Earth. And they're held as pets too. So yeah, some species, have their relationships with apes. I think one thing that I found very interesting too was to learn that a lot of species think that humans smell very weirdly. And the whole planet does smell very weirdly. I think the fascinating thing about the human brain is, and the nostrils and their organs and so on, is that when you are like together with a certain smell for the whole time of your life, you usually it goes into the background, and you usually don't necessarily smell that anymore, but other species do. And a lot of species that we've talked to said like the whole planet kind of like smells like a monkey house, like an animal shelter for apes or something. And humans per se, they have a very strong body smell, which humans don't smell. And if they smell, they probably find that attractive because that's how it is. But if you ever smelled your dog and thought like, "Ooh, she smells a little bit like dog," that is kind of like how certain ETs smell humans and think, "Oh, it smells like human."
Well, how do some of these ETs find humans to be attractive?
Interesting question. We go into mating rituals again. So there are some species that are interested in humans. There's a lot of species that are just very, very interested in love, which is amazing. It's just they recognize the soul within oneself, and they recognize, and it's more like exploring love. It's like there is a component, whatever it looks like, whatever form it has, and there's another component, whatever form that has, and when they kind of like come together, they have a chance to create like a beautiful arrangement of love, and it really doesn't matter for them if it's if that one side is an evolved form of a cat, the other form is evolved of, monkeys or something. It just doesn't matter to them at all. But it's just like the feeling of like we are developing together, we are developing some type of love together, and it's about the feeling and the emotion and increasing the love, which is actually kind of a beautiful thing. And a lot of times these beings, come together and work together, and it's just a nice thing. Then there are some species that are interested in more of like the power dynamic that can be felt and seen in dealing with humans. There are some species that are quite interested in, taking advantage of that kind of. There are also humans that are interested in that. So there are some ET-led relationships. We talked about that in the last episode, but we have a lot of documentation. The UK has done a lot of documentation of these cases too. So we do know that these things happen and occur. Yeah, and sometimes, there's also just some type of affection. The universe is sometimes throwing in interesting ways of feeling attracted to things and beings in the universe. And I guess that is kind of like something that in this society, in human society, is kind of like faded out, but in reality, people can fall in love with basically anything and everything in the universe. It can be a tree, a cat, an animal, or any type of any other being, and then you basically have a couple of two species. They will very likely not reproduce because they might be genetically not compatible, but yeah, they might love each other. That might happen.
I recently recorded a podcast with a guest, and I'm not sure if the video is going to be released or published before this one. But the guest and I were talking about how the Earth is going to go to a digital currency, and that this currency may be eventually one that the ETs use. So that way we can trade with ETs. Do you know anything about that?
There's a lot of things that need to be adjusted when we talk about the business level of planet Earth, because ultimately we got to take into consideration the story and the history of planet Earth, which is that the whole capitalistic idea and the whole way that the economy is set up is already influenced by ET species a lot. There's especially, the gray economical system, and there's also a certain reptile economical system, which is basically the originator or the source where capitalism comes from, which is, basically accumulating capital. Because that species, their whole system is kind of built up in that way. So instead of having democratic elements, which this planet often still has, in terms of votings and elections and such, they would have a complete a planetary system that is completely oriented towards capitalism, like led as a company in that kind of way. And the gray system, which is another extremely strong economical system, is basically built upon how to serve the universal idea the best. And a lot of buildings that we have, for example, the economic buildings on this planet, a lot of them are aligned towards Orion, which is kind of an interesting fact too. So outside currencies play a role. We gotta understand that it is not the way that we can pay everywhere with the same currency. The universe is a very, very large place, and there are quite a lot of economies and quite a lot of different monetary systems with very different approaches in place in the universe, but one of them is clearly the galactic credit, which is based upon minerals, technology, and so on. And the idea of how to connect the planet in some way with that galactic credit system, that is definitely something that has been discussed and will definitely show in some kind of way. Now, the theories how to do that, that is something where a lot of people have thought about a lot of things. A lot of nations might go slightly different ways, slightly different patterns. Ultimately, the AI, technology will come into play, because one of the things that is kind of challenging is that all these economical theories that people have, how to position things and so on, they don't always work out that way, because theories and practical, like the way that it shows in the complexity of planet Earth, with so many layers of actors and so on, it's kind of unpredictable. It's a kind of a chaotic system. And human minds are kind of too slow to actually, take actions. One thing that can work is going into digital currency and then implementing an AI system, which then would take the necessary steps in order to kind of keep it balanced.
So would you say then that cryptocurrency and blockchain technology is a step in the right direction?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Is it a step in the right direction? I think the first of the question that I personally would ask first is what's the intention? Because ultimately everything in the universe is based upon intentions. If we have a good intention about something, we can't actually go wrong. We can't be wrong about something. It might still not, be the smoothest thing to do, but if we have a good intention in what we do, it's almost like we're forming the layer of energy. We're basically, what we put into as an impulse will show up as a result. So before going into systems, one thing that I figured out by analyzing almost every system, social system, and so on in place, is any system can work. Any system can work. Doesn't matter how extreme it is, doesn't matter, how exotic it is, it can work. It is about the intentions that are put into that system. If that system is interested in finding balance and adjusting to balance and serving a higher purpose, then that system will become over time a very stable and very balanced system. If that system does not follow that type of intention, no matter how good it's constructed or thought out, it might encounter issues along the way, because then it opens itself up for certain tendencies. And I think we observe that a lot with democracy and capitalism and so on on planet Earth right now. I think that is something where we all see we do need to improve something. Somehow the system needs to improve. Otherwise, it must improve. It will improve, because it becomes something that will improve over time.
Are there groups of ETs out there that truly manage this planet and basically the Earth is a business for them and the humans are employees or workers?
No, and yes. So the answer to that is a little bit complex, because yes, there are species that are interested in the planet, in keeping the planet as a company, and everyone in that place, on planet Earth is basically servants to certain ideas. A lot of humans, we still see millions of humans who are kind of like trapped in certain systems that do not serve them as good as well as it should. Can we say that there's only one species that has everything in their hands and is like the number one species? No. That's against the nature of that type of the modality, of the dynamics of that idea, because whenever there's one species that wants to take everything into their hands, there might be another species that wants to do the same thing. And now you have basically multiple actors and players that want to basically reach the tip of the pyramid. And with that, there's a constant type of like remodulation. The only thing that we know is super stable and show stability is basically anything where we find true meaning in the universe. Whenever that is given, whenever we come to that point, a lot of this, a lot of the energies and the unresting energies, the ongoing chase for something, that kind of like diminishes and vanishes away once we find a, you know, a stabilized attitude towards the universe. Once we realize that energy is everywhere, all these wars and conflicts that used to be here for resources are not valid anymore because resources are given. There is infinite energy everywhere. There's enough space in the universe, in infinity, to basically host everyone and everyone's universes. So all these things just vanish away over time.
Why are ETs still abducting humans? Haven't they learned all they need to know from us by now?
Well, why do we still meet friends? There's a lot of, you know, like most of what we call abductions are contact scenarios. I would even say 9 out of 10, maybe even more people actually have okay contact moments or even great contact moments with other beings. Being contacted, being infused with ideas, being inspired by ideas, and so on. So a lot of these people have good experiences. There is, you know, every now and then there are contact scenarios or what you would call abductions that are not socially acceptable, and they happen on this, you know, level of reality that we are on as well, because there is next to 95% of nice beings, there are 5% of beings that do socially unacceptable things. But usually we would say that, you know, at least 9 out of 10 people have neutral to helpful contact scenarios. And then sometimes it's just about them being connected to certain species, them being connected to certain star lineages. And it's just almost like a family reunion. It's like meeting each other. Sometimes some of the messages are important for both sides. That happens quite a lot. Many other reasons why these things happen.
If people want to have contact with an ET, can we do it?
Yeah, 100%.
How?
How? Okay, let's go into the how. So first of all, what people got to understand is that we are right now in the shifting moment. We talked about that a lot. A lot of beings are talking about it. A lot of even more people are realizing that something is happening on planet Earth. We get all these news, new revelations. People are waking up. Just today, you told me about the pyramid story in Egypt, where they figured out what's beneath that. That's pretty intense and pretty revealing for a lot of people. So first step is realizing, yes, the planet in the vast ocean of infinity is not the only planet that is connected to ET species. That's number one that has to happen. Why? Because that kind of unlocks even the possibility of contacting these beings. Then there are two different ET ways, like different modalities of ET life. There's horizontal and vertical ET life. Horizontal ET life is everything that is very comparable. Vertical life is more exotic, beings that live in what you would call a different dimension, which is mostly usually a frequential level above or below where humans are. It's not so much below that, but it can. So a good way, first of all, most species will not appear directly in front of whoever is asking, for multiple reasons. We talked about that. The nervous system is definitely number one reason. A lot of people, and I've experienced that with groups that I've led into contact scenarios, sometimes in private before I did what I'm doing now. So a lot of people really got insanely scared whenever something would happen. whenever something would show up. It is a lot for the nervous system. Even though we think, we can handle it, it is still a lot for the nervous system. Second of all, there's also something about the bacteria life on ETs and so on and so on. So don't expect them to show up in like a 3D form, especially not, in the first contact or something. I would always say go into, mindful meditation, mind contact with them, mental contact. Use your dreams. Dreams are an amazing, nice way of making contact, especially when we remember the dreams, especially when we realize that dreams have a component where there is more reality happening. Most people still are like kind of confused because science will tell them, hey, dreams is only what's happening in your mind, in your head. But in reality, we've seen so much evidence, even on a non-stream level, that dreams go into all types of communication, all types of worlds. You can contact other beings. You can contact. You can, explore certain physical rooms and find evidence in those rooms and bring them back into your dream world, and so on and so on and so on. So dreams are an amazing way to contact beings, there are other ways. There are a lot of other ways to contact with beings like that. But for now, right now, while the planet is going through this political phase of bringing everyone on the same page of, yes, there is life in the universe, there's overflowing life everywhere in the universe to amounts that might be even a lot to take in, but there is. Once we've achieved that, we had a stage where open contact will be inevitable and is going to happen on this planet.
What do you think about those CE5 events where people get together and meditate and then UFOs will appear?
I love that. We actually do that in Italy. So once a year, I take a very intimate group of people to Italy. We go to the Lake Garda, which is a really beautiful spot, Italian Alps and the lake in the valley. It's beautiful. We do have like a meditation tent and so on, and we do these contact scenarios, different protocols, different routines. Each and every time we had something spectacular coming up. We had some contact last year in Italy where we, on 2 days, we had contact with ET species. At one time, we were connecting to a species that was telling us that they were monitoring us on basically a mental television screen. So they were telling us they have no bodies, they're like floating through their dimensions. They still know what we are. They especially knew what we were doing with All Shift Happily Now. And they said the way they would monitor and watch us, because we asked, like, how do you even know about us? How do you see us right now in this moment? They said they're like a group of people, they come together and they kind of like create a television screen, like a window into our dimension, and would watch through that and would basically see what we're doing without showing up directly in the space. So that was one of the contact scenarios that we had. Next day we did again, and we had contact with a reptilian species, and it was significant because that species decided to kind of take over a person in the group and started speaking through that person. It was not a bad reptilian species. What was actually what came through was basically a very humorous species that was saying that they have issues with being treated as the bad guys and seen as the bad guys because they're like not the nicest to look at and so on. And they were saying that what they do is like they specialize in comedy with their civilization. They were telling us how they dance, like almost like a Riverdale kind of thing, where they all hook in and then they do a certain type of dance. And they basically they were very straightforward, just taking over one person in the group, and she spoke in a different language, different tongue, and different voice, and so on. So these things happen, and it was not bad at all. It might sound might sound concerning, which it's not. It is just a communication. It's a way of communicating with other beings. And everyone who's going into that field, I mean, no one has to do that. But if you're thinking about contacting with ET beings, just realize that the ways of communication in the universe might be way more exotic than what you think how communication works in the universe.
Well, I feel pretty confident that ETs could obtain a mobile phone or a laptop if they wanted to, or they could probably figure out the technology to make it compatible with ours. I'm hoping that one of these days an ET will be a guest on my show here via Zoom. That way we don't have to worry about space bacteria and nervous system problems.
Yeah, I mean that sounds well thought out.
Can you make
Yeah,
that happen for me?
I I don't know,
Can you
but
help me
I
out?
could think of that. I could think of that because ultimately I believe in like a few years. First of all, there are species that would love to go onto your podcast, and there are species that would love to go into straight into the media and talk to people directly. Is it always wanted and wished for by people that govern this place, this earth? Nah, probably not. Otherwise, we probably would have these things already. However, there are contacts. We've received different ways of communication. We have certain scenarios where beings were directly speaking through WhatsApp. They were speaking through emails with other people. We have
Wow.
stories where radio stations were kind of like infiltrated, and then ET messages were coming through. We have stories where crop circles appeared on English hills, and they were having clear messages. Um, all these things happen. The stuff, the amount of messages that ET beings are sending us is insanely high, and people might not realize that, but yes, it is insanely high, and it it is just there's something about the perception of the human brain when something is not 100% how someone expected to be. For the human brain, it kind of puts it into the background and waits for the exact pattern to show up. So when people like humans sending out the golden LP, which they did, the golden LP that they sent out with messages from planet Earth and so on, and a few years later they received messages back, answers from that golden LP, but they never made it to mainstream, or people not even like were able to put that into perspective and realize, oh, this is an answer, because people would just be not seeing it. That's the interesting thing. If like a golden LP would come back to planet Earth, people would say like, hey, this is it can't be real. How in the world? How is someone sending us an LP back or something? So I guess that's more of the issue with perception and integrating that these things are already happening.
Is it more not seeing it or not believing it?
It is not believe. It's not. Well, the thing is that the human brain sometimes can see something, and then make it feel not real, which is a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting condition in the human brain where people can be brought in any type of like situation, and the way that the information are like prepared to them, they might experience something, but might believe in something completely different. It's almost the same stuff, like I could tell you that there might be ET beings running on this planet straight in people's face, and people would not actually believe that. They would not because they have a very, very distinct picture, very specific picture of how they want these things to look and how they want these things to happen. And the funny thing is, when that is kind of even like a little bit outside of that perspective, you can basically do what you want, and people would not realize that. It's a fascinating mechanism in the human brain that in advanced projects they have experimented with that a lot, and people would be eating an onion and believing that it's an orange, and you couldn't even tell them. If you're trying to take away the onion from them, they would like defend their onion and defend their reality. It's just something that happens in the human brain, that is like kind of a condition there. It's the same stuff that happens with the pyramids, that happens with crop circles, right? People look at crop circles and think like, instead of like, oh my goodness, there's like a 20 football field big ET message that just appeared overnight. It's like people looking at that and think like, I don't know, it's not a big deal somehow. Same with the pyramids, right? It's like a gigantic structure just in front of our eyes. And you revealed that to me today, that the message goes viral about them doing a sonar reading and showing that there are pillars that go hundreds and hundreds of meters into the ground. And it's just amazing, it's just an amazing thing. But can people make the connection of like looking at it and feeling it? Because that is sometimes people want to feel when they believe something, but sometimes you got to just believe something and it's right in front of your eyes, and sometimes the feeling might be different than what you expect just because you've used to watching a movie that prepared you for cinematic music coming on and a certain type of feeling. So I assume a lot of people had contact with ET beings and didn't realize that. We've seen that so many times. It is so easy for ET beings to be in disguise and covert, just because humans have a tendency to deny the reality in front of their eyes.
I remember last year you had a conference in Germany. Is this Italian thing the same thing or something completely different?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. The conference is actually something that we do with the All Shift Happily Now community, where we come together. It's going to happen this year too. And since I'm going to reveal it on my channel anyway, it's going to be in Mexico. For everyone out there, it's going to be an amazing event at the end of the year. The Italy adventure, or the Italy retreat, is something different. It happens in Lake Garda, Italy, and it's only like a very intimate space of 20 people, and we do alien ET contacts. I get a lot of applications for them, but I scan them and I look for the right individuals, because I had these experiences where people were seeing stuff and were just running away, and I do more research these days. And since you brought it up, I have one spot open for one interested couple or two friends. So if you're interested, join us in the last week of June 2025, allshifthappily.now.com, and send me your application so I know whether you're ready for Italy, and then we get you on that tour. Thank you for asking.
And I guess you really want to know, are you ready to meet an ET?
Yeah, I mean, we do some contact stuff. It's still mild. We do energy preparations too. So I think one of the most important things that ETs have always said in terms of what planet Earth is going through is you got to learn how to modulate energies. The universe is energy. We are energy. We are embodied in energies. So when we learn how to play with these energies, when we learn how to modulate them, when we learn how to communicate with the universe, there are many new dimensions showing up for us. There's so much to explore in the universe. But the number one thing that they were saying is you can't make it through the shift if you don't learn how to modulate energies. Whatever that means. It can be just, being in tune with life and knowing that everything will work out fine, but it can also go up to an extreme and knowing like yeah, we can actually put reality together like Lego blocks. And that is something that I'm doing with these very selected people in Italy once per year. Beautiful, beautiful mention that we have for everyone together. People become friends, which is amazing. We have amazing talks at the fireplace in the middle of the night with a personal chef doing food. So it's a really amazing thing. But we only have space for one couple. And I realized that a lot of people in our community are actually single. But if there is someone out there from the Beyond the Stars community who is a couple and would like to join me in Italy, also happily.now.com.
Tim, I would assume that you had to meet at least one ET out there that you befriended and you meet with from time to time or communicate with like old friends.
The thing is, Jeff, if I admitted that on camera, then that would be kind of like an overstepping of certain planetary rules that currently are in place. Because currently the politics are that ETs hold themselves kind of out of what's going on planet Earth in terms of disclosure and so on and so on. Communication is happening anyway. There's even though the agreement is in place and human like beings, ET beings are holding themselves back quite a lot in these times. They could just appear here or influence things, but it's really more about what does the species do right now in order to improve themselves, to get to a point where they are in belief with these realities, and they know how to structure these realities, how to integrate them in a good way. That is so much more important because everyone here on this planet has still a very long journey ahead of them in infinity, and got to learn to integrate these realities in a good way and become like in balance with the universe is the main priority here, way beyond some people just coming in here and cleaning up stuff. That's an option that might happen, but it's definitely not the number one thing that humans right now need. So if you're asking me if I'm in contact with beings, there's clearly, a lot of support. There's clearly, a lot of beings that are observing, that are doing these things. But we're all kind of waiting for the big moment where we have like a family reunion, and however that's going to look like, that's going to be the big interesting question here.
Would you consider yourself to be a whistleblower? And if not, what do you think about the people who do call themselves that?
No, I'm not a whistleblower, and I'm not even interested in being one, because the legal definition of a whistleblower is someone who reveals criminal deeds or unconstitutional deeds of certain, mostly governmental agencies that are against, rules, against the Constitution, and so on and so on. I'm not doing that at all. I'm not even interested in doing that at all. I know we're all on a path of learning and realizing and evolving and so on. So a lot of the stuff that is happening in the world is just a zooming into a picture of time. It's going to change over time anyway, with consciousness evolving. Decisions will change, intentions will change, and then the outcome will change as well. And a lot of the whistleblowers that we see that speak about ETs and their advanced programs or their uncovered, undisclosed disclosed agencies, projects. All these people they basically have agreements with certain whistleblower agencies and so on and so on. So at first they communicate how to communicate, what to communicate, and so on and so on. I'm not at all interested in that, and I think Beyond the Stars as a show is like just a different way of disclosure. It is just, you know, being joyful and fun about talking about these things, because they're going to be on new realities anyway. We're going to have these conversations sooner or later. So let's have them now, and let's have joy with it. I'm more of like a society trainer, to be honest, a civilizatory trainer who's you know, giving these information, who's helping to integrate them, and who's here to make it a happy shift. That's my approach. Bit selfish, because I want to shift and be in happiness. But I also want anyone else who wishes for that to be in happiness. And the beautiful thing is, when we become one cohesive thought, we build these realities in which we can then live. So that's my approach, and that's what I'm doing. And the funny thing here is, again, last question was, how does it feel? Is it real? And so on. Just because my approach is kind of like exotic to the other approaches, I'm kind of under the radar in that type of way, and I can do good things with that. And everyone else is doing their, you know, their revelation and their whistleblowing for other target groups, and that's all good. That's all part of the right strategy.
Tim, what does a post-disclosure world look like to you?
That depends a little bit. It depends if we continue the reality of being on planet Earth, or if we go into a more exotic type of reality. And I'm personally not 100% sure. I think we got to be prepared for both things. I think there's a chance in the universe that we go into a continuation of planet Earth, where we suddenly have a post-disclosure, post-shift moment, where we're basically still embodied, we're still playing roles, but dynamics on planet Earth will look extremely different. We will have different conditions, because we have an open system then. We're going to be responsible for a lot of other things. We have to at least take responsibility for a lot of things in the greater context. Studies show that when humans get into the moment where someone else is involved too, they usually change their behavior more like quicker, because they are social creatures. Meaning, when you know that someone is coming around, a friend is coming around, you usually behave differently. When you see your crush is coming to your house, you better clean your room. So these things are happening, and that shows in human behavior as well. So if we continue the path of living on planet Earth, being embodied here and playing humans, then I would say that you know, the rules of reality will be extremely different, to a point that so much exotic technology, so much exotic consciousness, so many exotic realities will shift into this world, that basically anything can happen, and there's almost no space for a naysayer anymore, because it's going to be super exotic. If we go to the path of giving up the existence of being you know, transitioning into a different form of life, then it will be completely different, because the environment, the life sphere that we're on, which is planet Earth, and the embodiments that we have, will change completely too. We do have evidence that, or at least indications that this might be happening as well. We could come to a plane or a space in time, where we basically look at this world, and then a major flash would happen, and we find ourselves outside of our used, you know, our common reality, and find ourselves in a different form of perception. That would be quite a large jump, and that could be quite a big leap, I guess.
Tim, it's time to read some questions from the audience. And the first one is from @Francisco Esquivel 5435. Have you seen UFO craft or reverse technology craft, and were you abducted as a child?
Yes, I've seen one UFO, and have I seen re-engineered UFO technology? Yes, all the time. Right now, when Jeff and we are talking over the internet, fiber optics, night goggles, um, lots and lots of other things, thermo fabric, all these kind of things. They come from re-engineered UFOs. We wouldn't have internet without 1947 Roswell, because that's something that came from that. Why? Because ETs thought it might be a good thing for human consciousness when we do have internet, and I agree. I think a lot of the world has come together and in such a beautiful way over the internet, that it's just amazing. And I would love to see that even more. I think we can make the internet like a very joyful place when we bring our right energies in. Like every Saturday when we do our live session. Um, Last time since season two comes to completion. But that's an amazing thing, and that wouldn't happen if we wouldn't have ET technology. I've seen an ET craft in the projects. They had one put onto bricks in the middle of a hangar, ripped open one side because apparently these things are pretty well sealed and you can't actually enter them from the outside because there's no door. So what they did was just like using some I don't know, some tools, just breaking off one of the outside walls and then building like a little ramp to go in there. And it was really interesting to see, actually. It was surreal. It's like one of these moments where you walk through something and it still doesn't feel like believable, which is kind of interesting. We talked about that in this episode a lot. You might go into like an ET craft and think like, oh my goodness, this is an ET craft. But it feels more like going through something in like Warner Brothers movie world, or I don't know, like Disney World or something like that. It just feels like nothing, to be honest. It feels just kind of placed there. Maybe because it was. So what I found interesting was that it was very much like 3D printed. It was very interesting. There was not a single joint, not a single nut, not a single screw or anything in that. Something that I personally found super interesting was that they had a little um, bench or something where they could put a body on, and it almost looked like a typical surgery situation. But the difference was, and I found that super interesting, was that usually we would put a pillow onto a bench, right? So that the body and the head would be laying on the pillow. That thing was only an indentation, so it was like carved out. So you would put your skull into that instead of onto something. And I'm thinking that it might make sense for a lot of ETs that have a longer cranium, but I also think that it probably makes a lot of sense for uh, the way that the human spine is formed, um, to actually not put the head on something, but basically put it into something in order to stabilize it. I think that made a lot of sense. So yes, I've seen these. I've seen that craft. I was with a group of people walking through that. Had a cute little seat, which I found interesting as well. Some 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 very like almost like TV monitors, but it was pretty much inside of the wall, so comparable, but also like straight out of yeah, not available on Amazon, definitely. Yeah, so that's my experience with that. Not too crazy to be very honest. Nothing nothing that felt too much to realize or to take in. But I think it might be different once those things operate. I think we've seen a lot of people, getting really affected by seeing those things fly. Again, nervous systems, being nervous. And the other questions, do I have contacts in my childhood? Apparently, yes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I was interviewed by this Emmy Award winning uh, producer who's also a friend of mine, and we were doing that for a book, and he basically asked me the same question, and I wasn't 100% sure about that. I know I have certain memories and so on, but it's kind of like vague and distant. But he was like asking me to text my mom here, and she said yes, there was like crazy things happening. She was saying that ever since I was a baby, there were like voices in my bedroom, and there was uh, you know yeah, some type of noises and voices happening, and sometimes I was kind of like, as a kid, kind of like coming to my parents and saying like, yeah, hey, there were these beings were in my bedroom last night again. And my mom said that they try to kind of like dismiss that as human parents would do. But there were also other occasions when they were saying that there was like, you know, like little grayish anomalies happening in the yard, in the garden, or something, where they have seen something happening around our house too. So, but again, there was like a climate of like trying to deny these things, because I do think that some of the stuff kind of freaked out my parents. And I think that's a typical behavior in a trauma behavior with humans, that they then like, like this.
The second question is from Diana Dawn. My question for Tim is, what are some of the most important do's and don'ts for people to know about and be made aware of when coming in contact with ETs for the first time? For example, would a friendly smile and a waving hello or extending our hand out to them for a handshake be perceived as friendly or considered as an aggressive move from us? Also, I hope you do more of these Beyond the Stars shows. They are fantastic.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much, Diana. That's actually a really, really good and helpful question, because we should know that. And it depends. It really depends. There is so much protocol and there's so much variety in the universe, that everyone has their own little perks and their own traditions and stuff. And just almost like, you will also see that on this planet, right? If you go to Japan, the way you bow and so on, there's a whole tradition and a whole meaning to each degree and so on. So it's very challenging to say, and we've seen in these advanced programs like a lot of funny things, funny interactions where beings required certain protocols that were kind of unusual for people that had to deal with them, for example. Um, for example, hugging. There's like certain species that or sniffing, right? I've actually experienced that. I've seen that in the programs, that there are certain species that like to sniff uh, other beings, almost like dogs do that, with other dogs as well. Not the butt part though, before you ask, Jeff. But there are protocols in action that make a lot of sense. And instead of like reaching out a hand or doing a gesture or something, I would say the number one agreed upon thing in the universe diplomatically is standing still, standing very still, and trying to lower down your energies and your emotions as much as possible in that moment, because you never know how the nervous system of the other being is working. There are beings that are very nervous. You might think, oh, just because they are space travelers and maybe they appear here, that they, are super bold characters and such. That might not be true. There might be beings that might be as scared of humans as humans might be scared of them, and some even, just randomly. It's very rare, but it can happen that species kind of like randomly happen to land here on the planet or come here into that reality for whatever reason. The universe, the quantum universe, can make openings appear and bring in beings and so on, can happen. So don't try to touch beings. I guess that's one of the things that in advanced programs, one of the first rules, Tim, don't touch beings, don't touch them, because you never know. Besides space bacteria and so on, you never know how the skin is that, poisonous, venomous skin, is that somehow toxic, and so on. So usually the protocol would be that two people stand about like 20, 25, 30 feet away from each other, and then just stand there as long as no one makes a move. As long as they make no move, you make no move. You just stand there and you try to lower down your energies and you become as neutral as possible. Because every type of emotion, humans have very strong emotions. They might not realize that, and emotions can affect the energies in the room very much. You will see that when someone is starting to laugh, and you start to laugh as well, and then you just giggling around and for no reason. That can happen. You will also see that when someone, these viral clips where someone is like freaking out, you will see that a lot of other people in the room will freak out too. Mass panic, you can cause that by just one person in a tight space panicking, everyone else would do. So trying to bring down your emotions as much as possible. Loving emotions usually do very well. It's kind of good, but there are also some beings that react kind of allergic to loving emotions as well. There might be some reptilians that just yaw, at you, just because they don't usually naturally might not 100% feel that way. So we've seen these things happening. There's quite a variety, but normally it starts with just being very respectful. Try not to make any move, and observe the situation. Be very neutral. Be very friendly, and see what happens. And don't touch. Don't touch. Unless you're asked to touch, then maybe, because you never know how the skin is actually set up in what way.
Well, Tim, it's been a fantastic season 2, and I think it was better than season 1. And I can only imagine what we would get into if we go to a season 3.
I'd be curious to see that, to be very honest. I love our Beyond the Stars shows, and there is so much great feedback. People love this too. There's a whole fan base, and meeting people live is always super appreciated. So if you would like to see a season three, I have a lot of programs and a lot of projects coming up very soon, and Jeff is busy too. But if you leave a nice comment, I'm sure he will reach out to me, or I will reach out to him, because I very much enjoy hanging out with Jeff as much as you do. So leave a nice comment and like the video. That would be nice for us, because we love that program.
And Tim, one last time, if people want to find out more about you, where do they find you?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I would love to prepare people through the shift and show them a little bit about these exotic realities. I am available on allshifthappily.now.com, allshifthappily.now.com. That's also where you can, if you are a couple, if you have a good friend to go to Italy with, let me know about you. I would love that. or shiphappily.now.com. Otherwise, tim.tactics on Instagram and Tim Tactical here on YouTube. And yeah, feel loved and happy shifting.
Welcome to mysteries, laughing shadows, twisted beams. JeffMara and Tim Tactical, yes it's real, yes it's real.